Hey folks, Philly Boy J back here with another video. It is the Thanksgiving holiday season, so I'm going to be doing another video showing you guys how to make Southern style collard greens. These are going to be some delicious soul food collard greens. Done a video before showing you guys how to make collard greens. This recipe is slightly different but pretty similar. These are the collard greens that I made for my aunt's repast a few months ago. We basically soaked our collard greens in a big bowl of salt water solution. And what my aunt is doing here is she's removing the stem from the collard greens and breaking the collard greens up. Now you can use whatever kind of meat you want, okay? You can substitute ham hocks for turkey meat, turkey tail, turkey butt, turkey necks. We use a nice amount of meat and we place them in a pot of water, make sure they're covered in water, and we allow them to cook on medium heat until they're really tender. You might need to add some more water. The water steams out before it's tender. The seasonings that we're going to use are sugar, garlic powder, onion powder. You can use Lawry's seasoning salt or regular salt, and black pepper. Okay. The other ingredients that you're going to need is chicken broth for additional flavor, butter, old chicken oil, and apple cider vinegar. That just gives it more flavor, the old chicken oil that you used previously, like the fried chicken. And the vegetables that you're going to be using are a onion, a green pepper, and a red pepper. Now I just have a red pepper here. I actually use 2 red peppers, and that's just for decoration purposes. But I usually like to use a green pepper, but you can use red or green, 2 green, 2 red. I just like to use red because it gives the collard greens a nice look when it's done. Okay, like to see the little red pieces in the collard greens afterwards. So I'm going to chop up my red bell peppers. You're going to remove the stuff inside of the bell peppers, obviously, and remove the seeds, give them a nice rinse, and then you're going to dice your red peppers up into really, really small pieces. You're going to do the same with the onion. I believe we did use 1 onion here. Depending on how many collard greens you're making. We didn't make a really, really big pot of collard greens. So you're going to chop your onions up into really, really small pieces as well, okay? Make sure that you dice your onions up into small pieces. You don't want the onions to be big, okay? So those are our pretty red bell peppers. Look at them. Don't they look nice? I know. Because I make that best. I said that best. Okay, listen. What we're going to do is we're going to get a pot. We're going to place the pot over high heat. And what you're going to do is you're going to add your old chicken oil to the pot. And what we do first is we fry, braise our vegetables first. So here we're adding the chopped up onions to the big pot of oil. And we're adding our red bell peppers. Okay, gonna get it a nice little stir. And we like to break down our collard greens first, and just to fry them a little bit first. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna add your collard greens, and you're going to fry them until they're like a forest green color. You would notice that the color will change. You don't want to burn them. Okay, so make sure that you're stirring them frequently. Okay, now this is a step that you don't have to do. This is just the way that my family made collard greens. Okay, so you want to give that a stir and let the vegetables fry and just brown just a little bit. Okay, so I'm stirring up the collard greens here, and that's basically just going to break them down. Okay, and kind of shrink the collard greens a little bit. So I'm giving it a big stir here. See all the bell peppers and the onions kind of got to the bottom. I'm kind of bringing them back to the top. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to season my collard greens. I can't tell you guys how much seasoning to use because it really depends on how much collard greens you're making. But just start off with about 2 tablespoons of each seasoning and see how that works for you. Okay. Collard greens are one of those things that you have to taste test towards the end. And if you feel like you need any more of the seasonings that we talked about, then you can add more. That's the onion powder. We have the Lori seasoning. Like I said, if you don't have Lori seasoned salt, you can use regular salt. I actually prefer regular salt. It's stronger. You don't have to use as much. And here's our sugar. Okay, so use about 2 tablespoons, 2 to 3 tablespoons of each of those seasonings. Okay, especially if you're making a big pot of collard greens. And with the black pepper, you don't add a lot of that. You only use about a teaspoon of pepper. Okay, because that's strong and that will result in your collard greens coming out extremely spicy. Okay, I had to learn that from experience. Do not add a lot of pepper. The apple cider vinegar, you want to add about a full cup of that. Maybe a little more, depending on how much you're making. But you want that vinegar taste. That's the key. That's why my collard greens are the best. I said the best collard greens in the whole wide world. And I'm going to add a whole stick of butter. Sometimes I even add 2 sticks of butter. Okay, that's just for flavor and taste. Now, this is not meant to be a healthy dish or recipe, guys. Okay. We're going to add the chicken broth. And I add more water than chicken broth. Or like half and half. And I only add enough water to cover the collard greens, just for those of you who want to know how much water do I add, Jay? How much water do I add? You want to add enough water to cover the collard greens by like 1 inch. Okay, now here are our turkey tails, turkey butts. And they are tender now, so what we're going to do is we're going to remove them. We're going to keep that water because that water has flavor. That's like a broth now. Okay, it's going to give our collard greens that the flavor of whatever meat it is that you've cooked for the last 2 hours. Usually take them about 2 hours to get tender. They don't have to be completely tender. Okay, so usually what I do is I let them cook for about an hour, and then I let them cook for additional hour when they're in the pot of collard greens. You want to chop them up. That's just the way I do it. My family do it. We like to have some meat in our collard greens. Okay, so you're going to chop your meat up into really, really small pieces. Let it cool off first. Don't burn your hands like I was doing there. So chop your meat up to really, really small pieces. Look at that. Look how tender that is. It's gonna give your collard greens some flavor. It's all about flavor, folks. When you're making collard greens, it's all about flavor. And these collard greens are going to have a wonderful flavor. We got the vinegar in there. We got the turkey tails, turkey butts. So that's the chopped up meat. Look at that. Look at that. Nice and tender. That fat is going to give it a lot of flavor as well. And this is why I don't add a lot of salt at first. I just add more after I give it a taste test towards the end, because that fat gives your collard greens a nice amount of salt. So we're going to add this chopped up meat to the collard greens. So what you're going to do is you're going to take like the fat out, that white stuff, remove that, and then pour the rest of that into the pot of collard greens. So we got the water, we got the chicken broth, and we got the broth from the meat that we was boiling. We're going to pour that in there. That's the way they do it down south. They use that broth. Back in the day when they didn't use broth, that was their broth. Okay? And that's essentially what it is. So you're going to give that a stir. So now you got that turkey butt flavor in there. The smoked turkey flavor. And for those of you who may think that, okay, he used butter and oil is going to be too much grease in there. No, it's not. Your collard greens are supposed to be on the greasier side. Otherwise, they're going to be rubber-like and the texture is not going to be good. The butter gives it flavor and the oil is to fry. We only used about a small amount of oil. I allowed these to just cook on medium heat for about an hour, and you know, this was the end result. Look at those collard greens. That was the end result. Now it's at this point in time that you would taste it. Once they're done, you would taste it. And if you feel like you need more vinegar, which I felt like I did, I added more vinegar, and I added a little bit more sugar, and I added a little bit more salt, until it tastes the way I wanted them to taste, until I reach my desired taste. So with collard greens, is like I said in my mashed potato video, you have to kind of taste it towards the end. That's the way, you know, us chefs do. We don't really give you amounts. You just have to wait towards the end. Once it's done, give it a taste test, and you like, you know, I need a little more vinegar. You just keep adding more ingredients until you reach your desired taste, until they taste exactly the way you want them to taste. Here I'm adding my little crushed red peppers, and they was delicious, guys. These were delicious. I hope you guys enjoy this recipe. Give my collard greens a shot for Thanksgiving. Let your family enjoy this collard green experience, because once you make collard greens the way Philly Boy J tell you to, you would never go back to making them the way you used to. Southern style collard greens from Philly Boy J.